Well, good morning, everybody. It's Sunday morning, or actually almost Sunday midday, coming up on 11:30 Eastern Time on the 19th of May. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show. I thought this would be a good time to do a live stream today because, well, it's a Sunday in May and folks have stuff to do during the afternoon and evening, so you could probably come back and check on this. If you're watching this on a replay. Severe weather is going to be front and center today and especially tomorrow and tomorrow night in parts of the plains. We're going to actually also see some risk for severe weather here in the Northeast, and it's not going to be like it's going to be out in the plain states. We've got a major storm that's going to be developing in the plains and impacting the Rockies. And this is going to create, I think, the chance for some severe thunderstorms and tornadoes. Tornado action this weekend has been particularly robust. There have been some 30 tornadoes, I believe, since Friday that have touched down in some areas back, out well to our west, of course. But this is all part of the issue with regards to the deep, deep trough that's out in the western part of the United States. If you think back to the weather pattern that we had in much of February and March and into the very early part of April, that unrelenting Pacific jet just screaming across the Pacific and bringing weather systems into California. They got flooding rains, heavy snows. Well, you're kind of getting the same thing now, except it's in mid-May, and the atmosphere gets, the atmosphere is somewhat different in that you're well into the spring season. You're well into the warming up that occurs. Now you're getting fairly deep lows that are running up through the plains and shooting up dew points into the 60s all the way up north. Temperatures reaching into the 80s all the way up north. You're creating a very, very unstable environment. Strong upper air trough swings in, and you wind up with robust severe weather outbreaks. And you have the Storm Prediction Center actually showing now for the last, I believe, 3 days, a moderate risk of severe weather for parts of the southern plains on Monday. So let's start from the beginning as far as what's going on for today. If you are watching this, if you're watching this later on, it's 11:32 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're watching this later this afternoon or tonight, clearly understand that the radars are dated. So you're going to want to go to your local National Weather Service weather page by going to weather.gov, accessing the local radars, and finding out the latest on any watches or warnings that could be up. So I just want to make sure you realize that, and you can go and access the latest information. Okay, so let's get started with what's happening. We're gonna take a look first at the radar right now, and again, 11:33 Eastern time. Busy for this time of day, but you can see all the drivers that are actually in play at the moment across the middle part of the country. The next driver that's coming in to the west, and the extension of the Great Lakes system producing some showers up in New England and in the Northeast. So we'll go here first, and here we have from this morning. We have a warm front that is setting up. Looks like right along I-90, where you can see those showers that are running across the northern half of Massachusetts, back over on the other side, on the New York State side. There are likely probably some rumbles of thunder in that. You've got heavier rain, a heavier overrunning, steadier rain up in Maine, and that is moving eastward and in northernmost New Hampshire. But as far as the areas from southern New England down to eastern Pennsylvania are concerned, you're just getting a little bit of activity. I know Iron Mind, I think you said that you had just gotten a heavier downpour earlier. You can see where it came from on the radar, just that little batch of shower activity that is moving to the southeast. As of midday, there is nothing going on out to the west. However, expect later this afternoon for some showers and storms to pop up in Pennsylvania and move eastward. I don't know how long they're going to hold on. I think they're going to probably get into perhaps the northwestern counties of New Jersey and maybe into the Hudson Valley, particularly west of 87 up in the Catskills. And then they'll likely weaken as we go into the overnight period. I'll show you on the NAM how it plays out. Uh, Down to the south, we don't have much, but we in the southeast, not much going on there. But we do have some active severe weather with a working tornado watch in Louisiana, in southeast Louisiana, and you can see there's this bowing line of storms that is moving eastward. It looks like they're just about on the doorstep of New Orleans and near Baton Rouge, and moving east and eventually getting up into southern Mississippi. We also have some downpours and a few thunderstorms up across northwestern Kentucky on the either side of the Indiana-Illinois border, and some overrunning rains and heavy rains in the upper Midwest on up through northern Wisconsin, northern Michigan, back through Minnesota. And of course, that's because you've got the surface low that is up in the Great Lakes and weakening. And meanwhile, here's the next area of energy that is just coming into the west, this unrelenting pattern that we've been in with some heavy rains that have just moved through the San Francisco area. Looks like we've got some heavy rains down near LA as well. And these bands are moving eastward, and you seeing some of this already into the southwest, into parts of Utah, Nevada, and into southern Idaho. So all of that energy is going to be for the next system that is going to be coming out in the southern plains for Monday. So let's take a look at what the Storm Prediction Center is doing. They actually, on these risk areas that they do, on most days they can put it out once in the day and not really have to update it much. But sometimes, and I've noticed that this year they've been doing a lot of on-the-fly updating of these maps, which is good because they're staying on top of. They're not just putting a forecast down and days in advance and then just putting it, going to sleep. They're really on top of the situation here today. Now, here are your risk areas. They're kind of split in two. With our part of the Northeast, New York State down through Pennsylvania, Northwest Jersey, you got that larger area of marginal risk running down into Virginia. The slight risk also extends down into northern Virginia and in through Maryland. And by the way, if you go use SPC's page, they get a lot of the update on the side menus. You can see the updates that occur on the various watches that they're issuing, and they'll oftentimes give you a heads up on the fact that they may be getting ready to issue another severe thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch. And they also have been headlining here at the top of their page the moderate risk of severe thunderstorms forecast for Monday. And that is going to be a pretty busy day, as I said early on. So here's how they see it for Monday. Moderate risk there in that portion of West Texas into western Oklahoma. That large area of enhanced risk running up through southern Kansas and then back down through Texas on the other side. And you've got the marginal and slight risk extending further north from there. That's when you see them, when you see moderate risks being put out on a day 3 map, you're dealing with something that's pretty serious, because the moderate risk, even out in areas where you would, Tornado Alley, it doesn't show up that much. When the dynamics on the models are there that early on, and you see what's going on in terms of the overall jet stream pattern, you can lend a lot of confidence that this is going to be a busy day. In the meantime, here in the Northeast, of course, we're going to have this cold front coming through tomorrow, and there's a marginal risk of severe weather from New Jersey on up through New England and northeastern Pennsylvania. What I will say about this area for tomorrow is this is going to be one of these situations where the thunderstorms the cold front's going to be moving through during the late afternoon, and the thunderstorms are just going to basically develop. Perhaps we could describe it as they're going to just come out of nowhere. And when you're when you are in a situation where you experience these cells that start to literally develop overhead, sometimes they can get pretty strong and pretty rocky. You can get a lot of lightning strikes and loud bursts of thunder from them. So I don't want to downplay the marginal risk for tomorrow too much, because it's one thing when you see the storms that are already there and they're kind of already reaching their mature phase and they're holding their own and perhaps starting to weaken as they move through time. But if you catch them when they're starting out and they start building up, that oftentimes can lead to some pretty rough weather. So just bear that in mind with that marginal risk that they have up for the eastern part of the United States for Monday. So looking at the NAM, this is one thing on the NAM 3 that Tropical Tidbits has that sometimes is fairly useful to use, is they do have an option when you go to uh, precip and moisture, and if you pull up radar plus satellite, it'll give you what the model thinks the satellite and radar are going to look like, and it's great to take this and then just try to match it up with what's happening. For example, here's our we'll go back to the current radar, and you can see the weather that the current radar is showing running through the from the Midwest down to Louisiana. And then when we switch to the NAM this afternoon, I mean, it's not too bad in terms of how it matches up. I want to just set it up for the current time so it's apples to apples. So we're at about noontime here. This is what the NAM says it's supposed to look like at noontime. And here's what the radar looks like. So it's not too far off with the thunderstorms. I would just argue that perhaps the NAM might actually have underdone that southern part of that squall line. It looks like it's a bit more robust on the radar itself. It catches the north pretty well. Also, actually, on the surface on the model showing snow up there in a band up in Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin. Excuse me. I haven't looked at the OBS to see if that is indeed the case, so we can just do that really fast. They actually do have some kind of special weather statement up for that area, so let's see what that says. Well, there you go. Duluth is actually snowing right now in 35, and on their special weather statement, talking about strong winds, gusts of 40 to 50 miles an hour. Amazing, isn't it? Here we are at the 19th of May, and they're dealing with this kind of weather still. Even though it is where it is up in areas up to the north, uh, still, this is a time of year where should be they should be done with all this stuff. All right, let's go back to the NAM and take a look at this. By the way, on the lower right is the area of disturbed weather that the Hurricane Center has been talking about, and forecasting a 40% chance of this low developing. Even if it does, I really don't expect it to um, do anything other than move north and northeastward, given the pattern. It's going to get picked up by the weather fronts that are the weather system that's moving through the northeast anyhow. So, but I guess if it does wind up developing some, it'll be another year where we've seen a named tropical system in the month of May. Okay, so here's your severe weather, which seems to reach its peak, and according to the NAM, actually weakens during this afternoon and into tonight. Now, meanwhile, here in the Northeast, take a look at some scattered cells that develop across parts of Pennsylvania and upstate New York. It's a very, very narrow line on the NAM 3 that reaches to the western New Jersey border. So that kind of covers the extent of the slight risk. The easternmost extent of the slight risk only goes into northwest New Jersey with a few counties. Then overnight, we're seeing some scattered showers and thunder running around. And now, as far as Monday is concerned, west wind, and after some morning clouds, I think we'll have some sunshine. We could see widespread areas getting into the 80s tomorrow. The west wind will keep the sea breeze at bay. So even coastal areas could warm up quite nicely. And here it is late in the afternoon tomorrow. You see where it just the dam starts to fire up this line of storms. It actually doesn't really develop all that much with them, and it seems to fire them up a bit stronger after they have moved offshore. But just bear that in mind that the risk is there that you could see this. You could see some of these cells, I think, start to fire up maybe in northern New Jersey or on up through the Hudson Valley as they move eastward. And if it's timed right, you could see perhaps a stronger cell or two in the mix. But meanwhile, watch the areas down through Texas and Oklahoma tomorrow, where we have a line of storms tomorrow morning, then a bit of a break, and then it really goes nuts with thunderstorms tomorrow night into Tuesday morning. There's a pretty serious looking line here that fires up on the NAM 3 across North Texas into western Oklahoma. That's right inside that area of moderate risk of severe weather. There is a low. It's hard to see on this map. I think geographically, if I could bring up a different view, I'm guessing it's going to probably be on this western U.S. map. Okay, so this might give you a better look to it. But this is whenever you're dealing with a deep low like this, uh, under 990 millibars this time of year, it's gonna create issues. And of course, you're gonna notice that this is another system that's bringing some late season snows to parts of the Rockies. And here we go with the development of the storms for Monday with the low. And look at the satellite signature on the NAM. Even on the satellite signature, the NAM's satellite signature, you have that comma shape that you always see with these rather intense systems. And this one lifting up out as we go into Tuesday evening, moving almost, the low center itself almost moves straight south to north from northwest Texas on up through West Kansas and into southern Nebraska. You can see where the radar echoes kind of curl there in southern Nebraska. So there's your low center. And on the eastern fringe of this, you've got that squall line that runs from Iowa, but particularly southern Iowa, then right down through into Mississippi. Now this is for Tuesday. Tuesday, you're going to see another risk of severe weather. It's going to shift a bit further to the east than what we'll see on Monday. And right now, the SPC's got a big area of slight risk. Wouldn't be surprised if they wind up adding a moderate risk to it. So let's look at the weather pattern going across the U.S. We have, I'm going to have to go to the old GFS model. Actually, here's the new one, so we can at least look at the low in the storm in the west here. Coming all that rain into California. It's been unusually active with this screaming jet bringing these weather systems. This is the time of year where things really should be settling down in the west as they transition over into summertime. But when you're still getting these big impulses coming in off the Pacific, and you wind up with these very strong storms. There's a 989 low pressure down there in southwest Texas for the middle of May, and that's formidable. And there's your low, moves up into eastern Colorado, and then just kind of gets wrapped up to a 981 pressure by Tuesday morning. That's insane for this time of year, and that's going to run up pretty far to the west into Minnesota. The deep trough is so far left that by the time these systems reach the east, there's not a whole lot to them, and as a result, this is probably our opportunity with regards to squeezing a bunch of nice days back to back. I guess this is the opportunity we've been waiting for with the screaming jet out in the west. The upper air bite last Thursday. You can see it on the left-hand side. You have upper low after upper low after upper low. In fact, I'm going to switch to the paint box. Okay, stand by. All right, hang on a second. I got to do this correctly. There we go. Ah, excellent. All right, so we got the paint box up now. All right, so let's illustrate what's happening. I'm going to go back to a few days ago. All right, so this actually takes us back to Thursday. This is what the upper air looked like, and look at on the Pacific side, just this long fire hose, okay, all the way into the west. You've got this was a deep upper air low that the first of in the series moved into California on Thursday. Here's the second one. Here's the third one after another after another. The East at this point on Thursday still had what was left of. Oops, let me just get the red colors. I think work better. So you've got, low near Newfoundland. What's left, another upper low that was sitting back in western Hudson's Bay, and of course this swung a trough through the east during the last days of last week. You can see it here. It kind of weakens out, get some ridging to build here in the east. Trough lifts up to the Great Lakes. It's so far to the west. And hang on, folks. I caught myself early. I know sometimes I forget to switch windows, but I caught it early enough. All right, so here's your weakening trough in the east, the strengthening trough in the west with these weather systems coming in one after another. Here's the one that's coming in today. Here's another one that's coming in for Tuesday. That's actually take a look on the left side. 1, 2, 3. And finally, after the third one, you're going to get a break. And this is later next week. A ridge suddenly pops up into the Aleutians here along about beginning on Wednesday. And you get a deep upper low south of the Aleutians, so the northwest, well to the northwest of Hawaii, still leaving us with a trough out in the west. But it's cut off. And you got one upper low that runs up toward the northern plains as another one rotates down into the southwest. As long as this is the case, folks, this is going to mean that we'll probably have one thing we won't have going forward. Let me put it this way. I don't want to say that leave the impression that all of a sudden the weather is going to be fine and dandy every single day. There will be issues as you're going to have fronts coming through from time to time. But what you're not going to have is a deep trough in the east with an onshore flow and low pressure going off the mid-Atlantic coast, or a series of low pressures moving off the mid-Atlantic coast with an endless onshore flow, and where you're sitting in clouds with temperatures in the 40s and 50s. That is what you're not going to have. You're going to have weather fronts coming through every couple of days. When those fronts come through, they will be producing some showers. When they go by, it'll turn a little cooler and drier behind it. As they approach, we'll warm up a bit ahead of it. And that's good. At least as weather systems are moving along, you can keep the weather reasonable most of the time and keep the rainfall, the periods of rainfall down to a more respectable minimal amount of time. Who wants to be locked into their homes for days on end? But just backing up one run of the model as far as what's cooking longer range. Of course, with all that troughing in the west, you suddenly have a ridge, an upper high that builds in the east later this week and into next weekend, at least for a short time, because there's another trough that's going to be swinging out through Canada. I think what this is going to mean, as far as what I'm thinking for the Memorial Day holiday weekend next weekend, I think this probably means some frontal activity to deal with toward the end of this coming week and on Saturday. But then if this trough plays out according to plan, I think Sunday and Monday may wind up being 2 decent days. They may not be all that particularly warm, but they'll be seasonal, or maybe just a little bit below, certainly manageable as far as outdoor activities are concerned. And with respect to the Memorial Day holiday weekend, we all know that of the three summer holidays, Memorial Day and the Saturday and Sunday that go with it, if there's going to be if there are going to be issues, this is the weekend that you're going to get This is the weekend that you're going to see issues with, if only because of the fact that it's so. It's really we're still in the spring season and not in the heart of the summertime, so it does become problematic. You're still going to be dealing with the the issues of spring, potential for onshore flow situations, et cetera, et cetera. If you can wind up with a weekend where 2 out of the 3 days work out okay, that's you finish ahead of the game. So here's the GFS's view for Sunday and Monday. Of course, as we said, watch for the firing up of some storms late this afternoon in Pennsylvania, Western New Jersey tomorrow, perhaps areas a little bit further to the east, and maybe a bit more up as we get into New England. By the way, in the lower right, you can see that the GFS has this little surface low. That's that quote unquote tropical system. Now here comes the monster in the plains and all the severe weather that's going to go on with that. But again, that low goes so far to the west that its impact to the east is minimal through Wednesday. Maybe a couple of showers on Thursday. You got another cold. They have a cold front that tries to move through here early on Friday, and here comes the one for Saturday that plays through late Saturday afternoon into Saturday night. So even with these fronts, you can probably bet that most of the time on a given day it won't be raining. You'll just have to anticipate the possibility of a few hours where you're dealing with showers. And then Sunday and Monday, if this is correct, you got a nice little high building into the Great Lakes, and it keeps things pretty dry and temperatures that look relatively reasonable. So I'm starting to get at least an idea that the Memorial Day holiday weekend may not turn out too bad, particularly Sunday and Monday. Saturday's sort of a question mark with regards to whether there are going to be some showers or not. But Sunday and Monday might wind up being the better of the 2 weekend days. So Iron Mind, thanks for hitting Super Chat. Really appreciate that very much. Thank you on this Sunday. Uh, Maybe I'll get myself a cigar this afternoon. Stan, I know I rarely, it's nice to see you, Stan, on board. You do rarely make it to the live chats, but it's nice to um, see you on board. And I appreciate you as always. Such kind words, and I really appreciate it. I haven't talked to Alan in the last week or so, which I got to give him a call. We usually touch base at least once or twice a week during, and it's when storms are going on. We're talking almost every day in the wintertime. But in the spring and summer, it kind of slows down a little bit. But I got to give him a buzz. And yes, he gave a wonderful job. He was very unusual in the New York market, at least in the 70s, because he was one of the first meteorologists actually to ever be on the air in the New York market. It was unheard of. And he did have a style. He wasn't afraid to get a bit more technical. And this was at a time when, by the way, when weather wasn't really especially important in the eyes of the overall newscast. It was just there to fill time. So it wasn't unusual with all the attention that's given to weather now, which seems to have now gone. Now we're completely the opposite end. If it drizzles, it leads. But back then, even on a day where there was severe weather going on, I could think of times where your weather had to be cut down to 15 or 20 seconds because of the fact that there was too much news in the show, and it just wasn't given the kind of importance that it gets now. And Alan was one of the ones that was here in the New York City market that other markets had already had their Mets on the air, or we're putting Mets on the air. And New York, one of the things about New York City when it comes to TV stuff, believe it or not, oftentimes it's one of the last places to get to see the changes that go on or develop in other parts of the country. I remember when I started in television that we had the graphic systems when I went to my first television station in Corpus Christi and in New Orleans. Back when I came back to the New York market in the late 1986, a lot of the stations here didn't even have the beginnings of the graphic systems that we all have now. New York City was one of the last ones, the last cities to go to tech up the weathercasts. And of course, now it's all about, weather is front and center, and I oftentimes wish it weren't, because it just um, it, it has put things, perhaps it has distorted, making small events far more important than they really are in terms of impact. And the larger events have become even larger. I mean, sometimes it is deserved, and I'm not saying it isn't, but a lot of times it's a stretch, and it can be very annoying. Yes, always a good idea to pre-stock. I got a humidor, Seth Dominus. It's got his stogies in there. And thank you. I'd have you lead with weather every night and finish the show the same way. As long as you pay me enough money, put a lot of zeros before you get to the decimal point, and yeah, I will gladly go along with it. All right, so let's wrap it up. It's 12 noon. We got the sun out, so you don't want to spend the whole day indoors, and neither do I. So the PGA Golf Championship at Bethpage should not have any problems for the rest of the day and into tonight. This, I believe, is the final round today. So no weather issues. And most of the time during this whole golf tournament, it's been good weather-wise. Just minor interruptions from the standpoint of showers. And we'll tomorrow is back to a normal Monday, so we'll have our normal live stream probably at about 7:30 Eastern time. And again, remember, if you are watching this on a replay, this is 12 right now. It's 12 noon Eastern time. So any of the radars and satellites that you saw before obviously are dated. Be sure to check, especially when it comes to severe weather. Go to your local National Weather Service office page at weather.gov and pull up your local Weather Service office so you can see exactly what's going on with regards to severe weather and with respect to any watches and warnings that may be in place. Have a great afternoon, folks. We will see you tomorrow night on our live stream at 7:30.